Hollywood, she was a goddess, a symbol of glamour and seduction, sculpted from light and shadow. But to Adolf Hitler, she was a prize to be won. A cultural jewel that belonged to his Third Reich.
He means everything in the world.
He would soon learn that Marlene Dietrich was not a prize. She was a weapon.
Don't remember me, do you?
Before Hollywood, there was Berlin. In the smoky cabarets and revolutionary film studios of the Weimar Republic, Marlene Dietrich became a star. Her performance in the 1930 masterpiece, The Blue Angel, was a cultural explosion. She was an instant sensation, not just in Germany, but across the world. She was the embodiment of the modern, liberated woman, intelligent, cynical, and utterly in control. Hollywood came calling immediately. She signed a contract with Paramount Pictures, and within a few years, became one of the highest-paid actresses on the planet. She was a global icon, a symbol of the sophisticated, artistically daring culture that had blossomed in Germany after the First World War. But back in her homeland, the world she represented was being systematically destroyed. The Nazis despised the artistic freedom of the Weimar era, but they were obsessed with the power of cinema. Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's propaganda minister, understood that to truly conquer the world, they needed to conquer its culture. And to do that, they needed stars. They needed Marlene Dietrich. In their twisted ideology, she was the perfect prize. A beautiful, world-famous Aryan woman who had conquered Hollywood. Her voluntary return to the fatherland would be the greatest propaganda victory imaginable, a signal to the world that the Reich was the true center of art and culture. She was a living symbol of German greatness, who rightfully belonged to them. As the Nazis tightened their grip on Germany, the calls from Berlin grew louder and more insistent. They didn't just invite Marlene Dietrich back, they promised her anything. Hitler himself, a devoted fan, sent personal envoys. Joseph Goebbels, a man who understood the magnetic power of celebrity better than anyone, orchestrated a relentless campaign to lure her home. They sent telegrams, they sent German film executives, they even tried to appeal to her through her family. The offers were staggering. They promised her complete creative freedom, a privilege no other German filmmaker possessed. They promised her wealth beyond the dreams of even a Hollywood superstar, with contracts that would allow her to name her own price for any film she chose. They promised her a custom-built studio, her own production company, and the official, state-sanctioned title of Queen of German Cinema. It was a promise of absolute security, of unparalleled power, in a world that was rapidly descending into chaos and war. All she had to do was come home and lend her face, her voice, and her fame to the Third Reich. Marlene Dietrich's response was not a polite refusal. It was a public and unequivocal act of war. In 1937, at the very height of the Nazis' campaign to recruit her, she walked into a US courthouse and officially applied for American citizenship, an act she completed in 1939. This was not a quiet disagreement. This was a slap in the face. It was a press release to the entire world, a declaration that she was choosing democracy over tyranny, freedom over fascism. She was renouncing the country of her birth in favor of the ideals of her choosing, but her defiance went far beyond symbolism. Behind the scenes, she had already been waging her own personal war for years. She began using her immense Hollywood fortune to create a personal fund, a kind of one-woman rescue operation. She worked with a small, trusted circle to identify Jewish artists, intellectuals, and political dissidents who were trapped in Germany and Austria. She personally vouched for them, co-signing their visa affidavits and putting up hundreds of thousands of dollars of her own money into a special escrow account to guarantee their passage to America. She helped rescue future legends, like the filmmaker Billy Wilder. She was not just rejecting the Nazis, she was actively subverting them, smuggling their cultural and intellectual targets to safety, right under their noses. Her war had begun long before the world's. When the bombs fell on Pearl Harbor and America officially entered the war, Marlene Dietrich made a decision. Her quiet, personal war was about to become a very public one. She understood that in a total war, stardom itself could be a national asset, and she was determined to turn hers into a weapon. She immediately halted her lucrative film career. For the next 3 years, she would not step in front of a movie camera. She decided her image no longer belonged on movie posters, it belonged on propaganda. She embarked on a series of grueling, cross-country war bond tours. From 1942 to 1943, she crisscrossed America, a blur of patriotic fervor, an exhausting, relentless grind of train travel, factory floors, and town squares. She was a shockingly effective fundraiser. Her natural charisma, combined with her fierce anti-Nazi conviction, was mesmerizing. She became one of the single most successful sellers of war bonds in the country, reportedly selling more than any other star. She was converting her fame, dollar by dollar, into the fuel for the Allied war machine. But her most powerful weapon was not her image, it was her voice. Working with the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, the precursor to the CIA, Dietrich became a key voice in America's psychological warfare operations. She recorded dozens of anti-Nazi songs, poems, and messages in her native German. Her famous, smoky voice, a voice that was once the toast of Berlin, was now beamed across the Atlantic, a ghost of a better Germany haunting the airwaves of the Third Reich. She would read poems from exiled German writers and sing folk songs, reminding German soldiers of the home they had lost, urging them to question the regime they were dying for. And it was through music that she would strike her most personal and powerful blow. The song was Lili Marleen, a sentimental German love song about a soldier longing for his sweetheart. It had become a massive, unexpected hit across Europe, beloved by both Axis and Allied soldiers. Goebbels' propaganda machine had claimed it as a perfect Nazi anthem, but Marlene Dietrich stole it from them. She recorded her own version, filled with a heartbreaking sense of loss and weariness. Her performance transformed the song. For the Allied troops, it became an anthem of hope. For the German soldiers listening secretly to her broadcasts, it became an anthem of doubt. She had weaponized their favorite song, turning its message of love and longing against the very cause of their separation. But selling bonds and recording broadcasts from the safety of America was not enough. Dietrich was one of the very first celebrities to volunteer for the USO, and she had one non-negotiable demand. She would not perform in safe, comfortable rear echelon bases. She insisted on going to the front lines. For nearly 2 years, she toured with the troops in the harshest conditions imaginable. She performed in the blistering heat of North Africa, in the mud and rain of Italy, just miles from the brutal fighting at Anzio, and in the fields of France. Her most harrowing service came during the Battle of the Bulge. Caught in the surprise German offensive, she endured freezing temperatures and constant artillery barrages. Suffering from frostbite and a bout of influenza, she refused to be evacuated, continuing to perform for small, isolated units who were fighting for their lives. She was showing them that someone from that distant, glamorous world was willing to sleep in the mud with them, to eat their same cold rations, to face the same dangers. She was closing the gap between the home front and the front line. For her tireless fundraising, her psychological warfare, and her incredible courage on the front lines, the United States awarded Marlene Dietrich the Medal of Freedom in 1947. It is the highest civilian honor that can be bestowed upon a citizen. America, her adopted country, recognized her as a hero. But in the country of her birth, a very different title was waiting for her: traitor. The Nazi regime was furious. Her public defiance and effective propaganda were a constant source of irritation for Goebbels and Hitler. In retaliation, they officially branded her a traitor to the state. Her films, once celebrated, were banned from every cinema in Germany. Her name was scrubbed from the press. But the price of her conviction was not just about her own reputation. It was a constant, terrifying threat to the family she had left behind. Her mother, Josephine, refused to leave Berlin and lived there throughout the entire war. Dietrich knew that her own anti-Nazi work put her mother's life in constant mortal danger. a potential target for a regime that specialized in vindictive cruelty. After the war, one might have expected her to be welcomed back as a hero who had stood on the right side of history. But for many Germans, the wounds were too deep, and the narrative of her betrayal was too strong. When she returned to West Berlin for a concert tour in 1960, she was met with protests. Newspapers printed threats on her life. She was heckled in the streets with shouts of, "Marlene, go home!" The woman who had risked her life to fight for a better Germany was treated as an outcast by the very people she had tried to liberate. Her defiance had cost her more than just a career in her homeland. It had cost her the homeland itself. Dietrich's greatest role was never captured on film. It was her performance as a soldier in a war against tyranny. For years, she had cultivated an image of cool, detached, and cynical glamour. It was a mask. In reality, she was a woman of fierce, unshakable conviction who risked everything: her career, her fortune, her family's safety, and her own life for a cause she believed in. She proved that patriotism isn't about the soil you were born on, but the ideals you are willing to fight for. She was offered the chance to be a queen in a kingdom of evil. She chose instead to be a private in an army of freedom, and in doing so, the star became a legend. Were you aware of Marlene Dietrich's incredible wartime record? Who are some of the other unsung heroes of that era that we should know about? Share their stories in the comments below.